Okay. Does this angle work? I think we're just gonna go with it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about how I got straight A's in college. So I went to Northwestern University and I graduated in 2018. And while I was there, I started off as an engineering major and then I transitioned to being pre-med. And then I took up a political science major and a global health minor. So I did so many different types of things and different types of courses. I ended up graduating with a 3.85 GPA, and during my last 2 years, I think I got almost all 4.0s. So, you know, it definitely was something that I had to learn over time how to get better at, but I wanted to share my tips with you. Now, I just want to let you guys know that I'm not meaning to brag by any means. I just want to tell you guys exactly how I did and how I did it so that you guys can also improve your grades as well. So I hope this helps, and let's hop right in. So my first tip is to get an understanding of what exactly the professor wants from you from a course. So typically what I will do is I will look at the syllabus and I'll try to understand what types of assignments there are. Sometimes I'll ask the professor, you know, how important is the textbook? Do I need to get the textbook, or is everything fair game? And sometimes they'll tell me that everything is fair game, but sometimes they'll also just be like, you know, yeah, you should read the textbook, but I'm not going to test on anything that is not actually said during class. And so when I get that feedback, it's super helpful, and I want to know what the professor actually values so that I know how to study for that class and what information to actually prioritize. So, you know, it's not that difficult to go talk to the professor. Usually they're really nice and they want to help you and they want to tell you what's actually important. And then besides that, you know, you can just kind of learn from experience and talk to students who have taken the class before and just get a feel for exactly what that professor is looking for. And based on the things that he emphasizes in class or emphasizes in the syllabus, you can know what's most important. So another thing that I will do is when there's an assignment coming up or an exam, I will usually go to the professor and ask them how I can best study, and usually they want to help and they'll tell me exactly what they believe is the best thing to do or where I should put my energy, and that's also really helpful. And it just saves you the time from focusing on every part of the textbook or maybe everything that you've ever talked about. If they're specific that there's something that you really need to know, it can be super, super useful and just help you immensely in doing well. So the second thing that I do is I make sure to go to office hours as much as possible. Now, I know a lot of students who don't really go to office hours and they still do really well in school, so I'm not saying that, you know, there's no way that you can't go to office hours. I know sometimes they're not particularly helpful for that specific class, but I would say that I am always the first person to be at office hours and asking my professors questions and the TA and just trying to get as much help as possible. So if there is an explanation that I need for a specific concept, or if I want a problem reviewed, I'll always go to office hours. And then I'll go a lot of the time if I'm writing a paper and I kind of want the professor to listen to my idea and tell me if it's valid. This can be so helpful as the professor wants to see you succeed. So a lot of the time they'll give you advice on what you can do to make your paper better, or advice on how to study or complete that assignment in a more efficient or effective way. And then for classes where office hours are really popular, I'll love to go and just listen to other people's questions, because if it's something that I've never heard before or thought about, it's super helpful for, you know, reinforcing something that could end up on an exam. And luckily I was in office hours, so I was able to hear that, or, you know, hear something that the professor said that they didn't talk about in class. I feel like there's so many things that can happen in office hours that don't show up in class but are so useful for doing well on a test. And then in addition to that, I think just making a relationship with your professor is so important, especially if you are on the cusp of a grade and you're just trying to boost your grades up a little bit. If the professor sees that you're trying a lot of the time, they will help you out and they'll give you even more advice, or maybe they'll boost your grade up a little bit if it's right on the cusp at the end of the semester. I think that professors just really want to see that their students care. So I think office hours is just so important, and I couldn't emphasize it enough. So the next thing I want to talk about is repetition. So typically when I am studying for an exam, I will rewrite my notes as much as possible. And then if the test is focused on the textbook and the notes, I'll usually make a study guide, and then I will rewrite that as many times as possible, because the more that you write something and the more that you practice it, the more it becomes ingrained in your mind and you're able to remember on the test day. So I just think it's so important to do. And then if it is a problems-based course, I will just do the problems that the professor emphasizes as much as I can, and make sure that if I got a problem wrong, I'm doing so many different problems that are similar to it. Sometimes there's not that many problems available, but I will just do whatever I have, and if I have to do the same problem more than once, I'll definitely make sure to do it, because at the end of the day, if that's what the professor is testing on, it's so important to just keep the material in your mind and make sure that you are emphasizing repetition, because ultimately that's going to help you remember when the time comes down to it. So the next thing is to have a study schedule, and this is something that I do all year round, but I think it's especially important during finals time. So I'll typically have a document where I have, every single assignment that's due in the coming week. And then I'll also have some notes on exactly what I'm going to be doing each day. And so, if I have a test that's the next week, then I will make sure to say, okay, I'm gonna review this much of my notes every day until I'm completely done. And by the time that test comes around, I've done everything. I think it's really helpful to use this method when you're studying for an exam, because you are just sure that you're getting everything done, and that by the time the exam comes around, you are going to be as prepared as possible. And I think this also works with papers as well. If I want to make sure to go to the professor or to go to office hours before the paper is due, I'll make sure to have a certain amount due by that date. So maybe I'll say, okay, I want to write this much today and then this much tomorrow, and then finish it by this date, and then I'll spend the next few days editing or whatever it is, But it's important to make sure that you are organized and you have every aspect of this locked down. Even if you don't accomplish it like you think you might, it can just help so much to have everything written down so you know that you're organized and staying on top of it. The next thing that I want to talk about is making friends in your classes. So I've gone to so many classes where I do not know anyone, and I just try to find someone that I'm sitting next to and start talking to them and become friends with that person, so that I have someone I can always text if there's some sort of confusion and I can't reach the professor, or somebody that I can go over problem sets with or study for in advance. This can be so useful in making sure that you're successful, because if you're studying with other people and you have others to explain things to you, you might save yourself from some big misconceptions and then maybe not doing as well as you might have done on an exam because you didn't understand something. I think also this really helps if you're able to explain stuff to other people, because that reinforces the topics in your mind, and then you will just, know the information that much better. And explaining and teaching others is definitely a form of studying yourself. So the next thing is working out, and I think this is something that people talk about a lot. They talk about how working out is so beneficial for reducing stress, and it was always kind of something I ignored, and I always thought, like when I'm really busy, I don't have time to work out, like I just don't. And then I was doing so poorly in a Gen Chem class, and I just had to get a tutor. I was doing so badly, and my tutor was just like, you are so stressed, you have to start working out or you're not going to be able to do better in this course. So I started doing a little bit of exercise. I would wake up in the morning and then I would run for 12 minutes. That's all I did. I just ran for 12 minutes and it completely changed my life. I ended up doing so much better in the class because I was so much less stressed and I was able to study so much more effectively because I could just focus so much better. Honestly, if I have a semester when I don't work out as much, I notice that I really don't do as well. And you know, you don't have to be obsessive about it. Like I said, I only did 12 minutes a day, and you don't even have to do that. You could do like a little bit longer, like 4 days a week or something like that. But you need to work out if you're someone that gets stressed out or you have trouble focusing, because it just makes the biggest difference in your life. And I promise it can help. Even if it doesn't help, like it helps me, it's just so beneficial for you, and it's just something that you can do that's not just schoolwork all the time. So the last thing that I just want to talk about is you do want to prioritize your time, and I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, but you also want to make sure that you have other outlets outside of studying. And so, you know, what I think is so important to do is just have other things that you have going on. And I know it can be difficult to balance extracurriculars and friends and whatever other responsibilities you have. You know, I remember being in college and I had so much going on. I did research and I also had extracurriculars. I was the president of a club. And then I also had, what else did I have? I had just like so many events that I went to. It was just like really stressful, honestly. But you know, it was just so important to have other things outside of school. And you might think that you might not have time for it, but I promise you, just try to fit something in. I always try to prioritize my physical and mental health, and I think it's just something that's so important to do. And usually that involves, you know, working out and making sure that I cook a healthy meal. And I know a lot of the time when I'm super busy, like when I was studying for the MCAT, and when I've just gone through other times in my life, I just think, you know, like I don't have the time to cook fresh food for myself, so I'm just gonna eat like a frozen meal, and I don't have time to work out. But when I do that, I realize that I'm not taking care of myself, and it actually hinders my ability to do well because I just feel gross and it's just not a good feeling. So you just wanna make sure that you have other things going on. Make sure you're hanging out with friends, that you have hobbies you're pursuing. We live in this world where everyone talks about hustle and, you know, working as hard as possible. And there are so many times where I have had to sacrifice going to some sort of social event for some sort of exam, or I had to wake up at 7 a.m. and study on like a Sunday morning because there was so much I had to get done that day. So you definitely have to prioritize your time, but you know, there's so much that you can do and you can make it work as long as you make sure to stay organized and not obsess over things and just put things in perspective. You know, it's just school, it's just grades, it's just college. I know a lot of you might be pre-med, but you know, it just is what it is, and it's not the end of the world if you don't get a good grade. That's all I wanted to talk about with you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe and like this video, and let me know if you guys have any questions. I really hope this was helpful and gave you some tips on how you can do better in school and get straight A's. So yeah, that's all from me, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye guys.